Yeah. Um, Hi, everybody. Um, Thank you, Nalini, and thanks to all of you. It's a pleasure to be part of this group and to meet you all. Um, so I'll just kind of, so when Malia asked me if I would like to talk about an issue which was close to my heart for this forum, I said, of course, yes. I mean, I love talking, especially about issues close to my heart. And for me, nothing gets closer to my heart than gender equality. So I'm kind of thinking of this talk in a little bit cheesy way, but let's call it what American women need. And we're gonna today look at as the topic suggests, the idea of economic freedom and equality from a gender perspective for women in America. So, in the next few minutes, what I will attempt to do is set the context, propose a few policies, and then make some recommendations for some sort of an action plan to be evolved around those policies. So, as we all know, we are all living it. We are in the middle of a recession. The global pandemic has crippled economies and workers across the globe. Here at home in the US, the recession is being billed as the she session by many. American women are carrying a disproportionate burden of the impact of this recession. Just to put it in context, some numbers, larger scale numbers are that, since the pandemic began almost a year ago, 5.4 million women have lost jobs compared to 4.4 million men, and that is almost 20% more job losses for women. Now, I mean, that's just sort of what is happening right now. And the pandemic is one of many reasons for why that is happening. So there is a plethora of structural, systemic, and cultural reasons for why this is the case, why, pandemic is hitting women so hard. um, the she session, and I have a hard time saying this word, so I'm gonna probably say it wrong a few times. Just a warning. I slur on this word a lot. Due to the pandemic, in my opinion, is a a symptom of structural and systemic gender-based discrimination against women. It is just the pandemic in its own right has done an excellent job on shedding light on the social and economic location of American women, but the reasons have existed, from before, for that. So so now we have a new government and we have more hope, and we are talking about starting a process of recovery from this recession. And I submit that unless American women and their needs are kept in the center of the agenda, it will be very hard for it to be a sustained, long term, equal, and just recovery. So, since we're talking about recovery, immediate and beyond, I kind of wanted to now bring in this idea of, what American women need and how do we get that done. So that's kind of the part of the talk that I will get into. So I'm going to propose in my talk three um, like overarching policy demands, you can call them, that I consider interlinked with each other. One is an immediate one, which is that women must be able to keep their jobs. So the immediate step to ensure that is that women's jobs should be protected by law. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how that works, but it must be legislated that women's jobs are protected. That's the immediate step. The second step, I think, is a more middle to long term demand that looks beyond the recovery too, for what the idea is of economic freedom and equality. And that is that women must be able to stay and grow in their jobs. So, how do we get there? And for that, I am proposing three solutions for this point. And that is universal childcare being the first one. That state must step in and take away the responsibility of child rearing solely from the family. women tend to bear disproportionate burden of childcare. We all sort of know that there is evidence out there for that. And during this pandemic, especially as schools have closed, um, women saddled with childcare responsibilities have either lost or quit jobs or taken massive cuts. So and the not so that's one part. The other part is also that the nomenclature of jobs that women often do does not allow them to work from home, because I think that the jobs sort of are gendered, what kind of jobs women end up doing and what kind of jobs men end up doing. um, and even when they are working from home, they are often solely responsible for childcare. So for in my submission is that universal childcare is a must, not just during the pandemic, but for the long term impact it will have on women's equality and freedom. The other thing I think we need to do to ensure that women stay and thrive in their jobs and their careers is capacity building of women. Because as we talked about earlier, the nomenclature, the gendered nature of jobs. Um, Traditionally, women tend to do lower paying, less skilled, less skilled, um, um, and sometimes caregiving kind of jobs. As I said, I believe that access to jobs is access and availability to jobs is gendered. These are these jobs are also mostly underpaid or less paid. Um, so the first solution, of course, is a generic solution, which is to raise the wage. You know, the minimum wage should go up. That will really affect women as workers as well. And the second thing is, which I think I'll link to my main point in this one, is that there needs to be sort of a special skill building initiatives for women. So, um, women start at a certain location. How can we help them with developing their skills and their capacities to be able to fit better into the mainstream of economy and stay there? Um, so we all understand that the cultural aspects of biases and gender-based discriminations that keep women behind is a long-term millennia level fight. We're not going to win those in our lifetime. We can only chip away on those. But in the meantime, I think, and I propose, that a winnable fight is that we demand that in addition to capacity building that we talked about, women also need affirmative action based on gender. We have we do not I do not see that very clearly based on gender as a category, and I think we need to start demanding that and start talking about that. The third um, solution in keeping women in their jobs and thriving, in my opinion, is paid parental leave, and with special emphasis on both maternity and paternity leave with job security for women. So as we all know here that United States is the only developed country that does not have paid parental leave mandated by law, um, and the only country among 41 OECD countries that is so. If you just look across the border, our neighbor Canada, for example, they not only have paid parental leave, they also guarantee the job and benefits while the woman is on maternity. So there is sort of really no reason for us to delay this any further. And it's one of the demands that we should make for women to be able to be equal participants in the economy. Having said that, here in the US, it is illegal to fire a woman for her pregnancy. But there are so many loopholes to fire women apparently for other reasons. You can fire her for any reason after you found out she was pregnant. How is she going to prove that? So to fill up those kinds of things, we must push for legislation that guarantees paid maternity leave with job security for women as a federally mandated law for all employers, like it is in other countries. Um, and I think the third sort of larger long-term policy thing that I see is that women must have a claim to equality of economic location. And what I mean by that is that, for example, in the United States in 2021, we still do not get equal pay for equal work. Despite the Lilly Ledbetter Act that was signed by President Obama, American women on an average make about 80 cents to a dollar, a man's dollar. There are different scales. You know, Black and Latina women make much less than, white women or Asian women. But just to put the number out there, so I think it must be made illegal to pay women less, and steps must be taken by the federal government to legislate in a way that employers are forced to ensure pay parity. One of the ways could be to um, force transparency in pay. Like the employers need to tell you how much they're paying other people, including men, when they hire you, so that they can either be shamed or sued in case of lack of of parity. Um, so my fundamental point here is that economic equality is crucial for women. And as we know from what we have talked about so far, the caregiving and child rearing falls disproportionately on women. And since men often make more money than women and are seen as breadwinners, perceived as breadwinners, um, when a crisis comes, like say this pandemic, where kids have to stay home, or a health crisis emerges, families often decide for women, and women are part. Families is a particular word I chose because women are often part of that decision too, to sacrifice their careers for childcare and caregiving. And so I think pay parity and equal economic rights will be very important so that women don't have to make those choices, because it's not, I don't think it's fully a free choice. It's a, in a way, of course, choice because of all the situations that we talked about. So that's my larger policy, three major policy points. Now, okay, this is all well and good. You all probably know this. I'm not telling you anything new. Um, but what do we do about it? That's the whole point of all of us coming together, right? So I have a few proposals, and again, they're not anything unique or novel. They have been tried and tested. But I think it's kind of shifting the narrative and the way we think a little bit about these issues that is going to come out of this. We must demand gender-based affirmative action. We have to build in, it's not just enough to say on the basis of sex there will be no discrimination, but how will an affirmative action policy look that focuses on women? Um, so I also want us to remember that women are the largest subordinated and oppressed group on the planet. We must not forget that woman is a universally subordinated category. And we should not be ashamed of sounding old fashioned when we reclaim feminism, universality of women's oppression and of patriarchy. Women and their allies should be unabashed about these demands, which means we got to make them openly. Second is, and I promise I'm done very soon. Second is, build sisterhood networks, coalitions, and think tanks to make these demands constantly. We cannot, you know, uh, just stop talking about them. We need to make these demands. We need to build more evidence. We have to build public knowledge and opinion on these issues, especially around the idea, again, as I said, of gender-based affirmative action. Um, Third, reach out to open-minded and supportive elected officials. I'm willing to make that assumption that there are those who would be open to listen. So call, email, make office visits, campaign, write letters, organize town halls. Like we saw the power of town halls when they attacked ACA, and how we were able to save Obamacare with those town halls and that making it an issue. And that was about saving something. This is about building something. So we should do those. Write, speak, organize, and publicly shame figures when, or employers or whatever, when needed. And the last point is that if last 4 years have taught us anything, is that democracy is a constant sport. Just because we saved our democracy doesn't mean that we go back to sleep. We gotta stay involved. Freedom, justice, and equality are battles that one must fight throughout their lifetime, and we must continue to commit to fighting the good fight. So, lastly, I would like to say that we have a huge opportunity right now because of the resistance of last 4 years and what we were able to pull off in defeating Donald Trump and his cruel, inhumane policies and opening up a window for progressive policies to come in. We have a government that came in making big promises to American women. We started 2021 with shattering a glass ceiling in the arena of politics, and there was a sort of a seismic shift in the power balance for women. And so we now must continue to do our part to encourage, to educate, and when needed, push, not always politely, this government. We must ensure that we are heard and that our government knows that we are watching, because that is, after all, the foundation of a democracy.
Thank you so much, Prachi. You're getting a bunch of applause here.